Hello everyone. This training video is going to cover how to review tax returns. So these are reviewer procedures. Basically, we're going to try to verify data entry in Drake and Atom. So your first step is to identify and select returns to review. So to do that, you're going to be in Atom to identify those. So I'm going to move this over here and refer back to it. So over here, excuse me, over here under Office Events, you'll see Review Now Waiting. There's 3 past due. I believe we have it set for every 2 hours. It's going to identify them as past due if we don't review them within 2 hours. Open this up. I have 3 in here. I'm going to try to look for the ones that are refund advances. Those I want to review first. After that, I'm just going to take them in order. So oldest would be taken next. So don't grab them if there's, they're newer ones. Go for the older ones. And I'm going right down my list here. So here's my procedures. So I'm going to move it then to in process. So once I select it, I'm going to then hit the edit pencil, or I can go right into the file if I'd like. If I hit the edit pencil, move it from here to review in process, I save it. That's it, gets it out of this queue. And when I select here, move down in my review, here's review in process. So this is going to keep track of who's actually doing the reviewing. So now, which would be myself, I'm logged in under Mark. Now I'm going to go into their file. If I click on the status here, that's going to open up all my events. So this automatically be checked. If it's not checked, go ahead and check it. That way you can see if there are any notes along the way that the reviewers should be aware of. You can also look to see if there's a red dot here for permanent note. Sometimes that gives you some information that you need to know when reviewing the return. In this case, there was nothing, so I'm reviewing process. Let's see what my next step is. So now I'm going to open up the client return in Drake, and I'm going to copy and paste the client social. So then I'll make sure that the social in Atom is matching the social in Drake. So to easily do that, this icon right here is going to copy the access code, which is actually the social. I left click that. I go into my Drake, open, right click, paste. We're looking at Betty here. Hit OK. Now I'm in the file. So from here, I'm going to move back over here to my steps. So I'm in step 2 here, view the events. We already did that. Inside of Atom to see if there are any notes. There were none. Now I'm going to verify the reviewer documents, the client info sheet, the W-2 that were all entered properly into Drake. Also, I'm going to double check my rent credit or my property tax credit to make sure my income is at least double the amount of rent paid. So anyone who's doing any reviewing should have at least done the basic problems 1 through 9 so that you have an idea what I'm talking about. So because you at least have to know where the W-2 screen is, what's a rent credit, what's a heat credit. So do that first before you do any reviewing. And we're going to verify that CR7, which is a heat credit, to make sure that was filled out. So let me go over here. I'm going to minimize my Drake for right now. I'm going to go to my account docs. That's for my reviewer docs. There's my W-2s, 1099s, my client info sheet. So I'm just going to pop this open here. And I'm going to show you a few things about the client info sheet, what you really need to focus in on. So the main thing we want to look at, I would say maybe the occupation, not that that's a big deal, but make sure it matches. Address, when they initial off on the result letter, when they sign the return, they're actually verifying their own address, so we don't need to do that. Coming down here, the W-2s, make sure if there's anything checked here. Sometimes the preparers forget to put the child support in, so you're going to make sure everything here is actually inside of Drake. FIP, these affect Michigan, so make sure they're entered in. The dependents, obviously, if we have dependents on here, we want to make sure they're inside of Drake. You don't have to worry about verifying the social, maybe the last name, but not even that, because when we electronically file the return, the IRS is going to double check. If the social doesn't match, they're going to send it right back to us and tell us that, and then we can then check it out. So I'm trying to have you identify areas where there might be mistakes that if it gets accepted by the IRS, we could have problems. But excuse me, the IRS will identify if there's a bad social or a bad last name. So scrolling, one thing you want to look at for dependency that sometimes preparers miss and the IRS will not catch is if it's tagged that they're check disabled. So you want to make sure that's recorded on screen too. There's a box that you have to check disabled and also write in disabled for Michigan on there. And then if they're a college student, then if they're over age 18, there's on screen 2, there's a box there too. Again, whoever's reviewing should have at a minimum gone through problems 1 through 9, so you know what I'm talking about right now. And now we go to the back side. Here's the heat credit. Make sure that they filled out the heat credit screen in Michigan. Now the majority of them don't get the heat credit, but just for our inexperienced preparers, it's good practice for them to just fill it out and let Drake do the rest. For rent, obviously they're going to fill this out. So what you want to in this case, they forgot to mark yes or no. So hopefully the preparer would go ahead and do that, ask the question, because it's very important. Obviously, if they're not on the lease, then they shouldn't be claiming the rent credit. Now, if they're not on the lease, they could be going month to month, so they may think they don't have a lease, but they really have a lease. So basically, the preparer should be asking that question, and hopefully they're making a note, because if they show no here, then they should not be doing a rent credit screen. So to prevent them from getting a reviewer question, but again, they need to be on the lease or have a lease. 12 months, obviously we don't want to go over 12. So just make sure this was entered in correctly. So you're verifying that, because again, the reviewer really wants to focus in on areas that the IRS will not catch. Okay, and when I say they won't catch immediately when we electronically file. They'll catch it probably later, like a year or so from now. But we don't want those things to slip through the cracks. So like W-2 data entry and everything. So here's the bank information. Again, direct deposit, the client's going to initial off verifying that. So I'm not really that concerned about this. Now, if you have a lot of time when you're reviewing, go ahead and double check the address, check the account information if you'd like. But if we have a lot to review and few reviewers doing it, the quicker way to review is you don't have to get hung up on this, because the client actually reviews it for us when they initial off. But the more time you have, obviously you can double check even more, but I don't really think it's needed because the client's doing it for us. Now you do want to make sure if they select the right bank product so if they say refund advance, then hopefully the preparer did it correctly in Drake, especially right now if during the early part of the season when we're still learning. So you do want to make sure that gets done correctly. Moving on to the W-2, what's important on the W-2 to check? Obviously, any dollar amounts are important. So for sure, box 1 and box 2, and box 17 and box 19. So definitely want to make sure the data entry is correct there. Obviously, you want to make sure everything's done correct, but those are the real biggies. If this gets accepted, it'll get processed, they'll get their refund, and eventually they will get a letter if those boxes are incorrect. So data entry errors happen. That's why we're doing a review process to begin with. You also want to double check the EIN number. That's not as important as these amounts over here. And of course, if there's something in box 12, just whatever's on the thing, whatever's on the W-2, go ahead and make sure it was entered in correctly in Drake. I'm not so hung up on the addresses of either the employer or the client. That's not really that big of a deal. If it's wrong, I don't need that corrected in Drake. And that's it. So that's just a very simple one. I don't have any other, but if there's any 1099s or Social Security, obviously just double check the data entry because that will not get rejected by the IRS when we electronically file. So social security numbers will be rejected, date of births will be rejected, last names will be rejected. That's what you're not that concerned about because the IRS will do it for us. But data entry in the W-2 or the 1099s or whatever the data documents are, that's what we're concerned about for sure. Okay, so I'm going to close this out. Let me see what next on our steps here. And I'm going to, I'll show you the CR. Again, you guys should be familiar with that. Verify that all required signature documents were signed and initialed. So here we have the signature documents. I think I labeled them reviewer documents, but let me open this. Let me look these up 1 second. Okay, here are my signature docs. I found them. So we're just going to click on here to open them. And I'll drag it over here. So obviously here's the result letter. Make sure they're initialing off. This is where they're verifying their address, phone number. So that's why I'm saying we don't have to spend as much time double checking that. Now this result letter, I'm going to tell you these numbers here. We're going to make sure these match up when we view the return in Drake to make sure we didn't accidentally check a box and change the return. Definitely don't want to do that from what the client knows they're supposed to be getting back. Here's the 8879. Same, we can e-file the return. And then here's all the bank information. So you're just double checking to make sure everything was signed off that was supposed to be signed off. Okay, make sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And also, there is a proper way of highlighting and everything, and you should have watched that video already on print and assemble. So if our preparers are doing it incorrectly, let them know, just send them a nice little reminder to tell them, we want to all be consistent and do things the same to make it easier on everybody in the office. All right, now let me go back to my sheet here. So we're going to match the result letter with the Drake return. Once I open up Drake, I'll go over that, verify the correct tax return was uploaded. So here, as long as I see their name, I don't actually have to open this. If you see their tax return the year and it says the name, then obviously it's the right client file, the right tax return. Verify that transactions and fees are recorded properly. I'm going to go ahead and open up Drake right now. So I'm in Drake because I did a copy and paste. This is where obviously I'm going to double check my W-2 and everything, make sure that was entered in correctly. And when I view the return, make sure the amount, now this is a different dollar amount matching up with the result letter, but you want to make sure the refund amounts or balance dues are matching with the result letter. The fee right here, so $195, you want to make sure that matches up with what's in Adam. So if I go over here to my transactions, they decide to get a refund advance, so $195. So that I'm going to double check that in the bank product, make sure that was done correctly. In this case, it wasn't. So I'd have a low cost and apply for pre-act. Normally this is going to be done correctly. It's just a dummy return, but you want to make sure whatever's the client wants is actually in here. And if they change their mind, the preparer needs to make that documentation inside of Adam so the reviewer doesn't have to question that it was done correctly. Okay, so I got the fees discount, that was done correctly. Now I'm on step 8. So when everything's good to go, then I can mark it EF ready. And so I'd go into my EF screen right here and select X. Now sometimes the first step I do is when I go into the return in Drake, I actually go to the EF and I check the box, or I hit X right here just so I don't forget to do that. And if I find a mistake or something that we need to hold off on this, I would then go back in EF and I would take that X out. So whatever you prefer to do, but just so you know, we can't e-file this return if an X is not selected up here and ready for EF. And then you actually have to view the return. So it's not just putting the X, you then put the X and then you view the return, and then that allows it to be prepped for ready to be e-filed. So a lot of times reviewers will place the X here but then they forget to select view to calculate the return. Next on here, we're going to change the event. So if everything was good to go, and obviously one more thing, I need to make sure I have green checks. So EF status, these all need to be green. If for some reason it's red, you might read the message as to why it's red. If you can fix it, go ahead and fix it. If you can't, send it back to the preparer, because maybe you did something and checked the box and made it red. But if the preparer sent it to you and it's red, they should never do that. It always should have green checks or have a notice to why it's not a green check. So if everything is good to go, then what you're going to do is in Atom, you would then move it from, I'm in my events here, so I'm in process, I would then hit add, and then I would say it's EF ready, so EF ready 1040s. All right, I'm not going to do that because I want to focus on if we actually find an error. So what I didn't point out, if you're reviewing a return and you need additional help, move it down to additional help, make your note, assign it to probably myself or Ethan, and then we'll go ahead and help out whatever's needed. So if it's a little over your head, go ahead and do that. Next, we're going to focus in on if we find a discrepancy. So if there's a problem. So discrepancy or errors found when reviewing. So not everybody's perfect. We all make mistakes. So what we want to do is we would identify what the mistake is. Say they entered something wrong on the W-2, and you can even say what the difference in the refund is by correcting it, and then that preparer needs to make the correction because you don't want to do it, and something like that, you don't want to make the correction and move it to EF ready because there may be a reason why the preparer did what they did. So you weren't there for the interview process, so we don't want to just assume it was done incorrectly. Send it back to them. They can make the correction. They then need to make a call to the client, explain what the change is. If it's changing the amounts on the return, make their note, and then they can move it to EF ready. So I don't need it to go back to the reviewer because the reviewer may be busy or may not be there anymore, and then it'll just sit there. So they can just go ahead and push it right to EF ready, unless there's for some reason that needs to go by the reviewer, but the reviewer can tell them that. Otherwise, I'd like them just to go right to EF ready once they've done what they need to do. Now, you need to make your notes. So if I say there's an error, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit edit or add, move this down to review questions, make my note, say W-2 was missing, you missed the second W-2. Okay, and then if added, the refund drops by $500 or say $400. All right, so then I just assign it to that preparer. So let's say the preparer is, I think in this case it was Ethan. So I mark Ethan so he can see that in his assigned task. Then up here, the event user, see it's defaulting to my name because I'm creating this event, but you want to actually change the event user to whoever the preparer was. So I'd say Ethan, I then save it. And then you're going to get this event checklist pop up. This is like the error checklist. So I want to identify where the mistakes are, what kind of mistakes we're making, and who's making the mistakes. Just so if one preparer is making more mistakes or too many mistakes, then we'll go to them and figure out what the problem is. And if we have to train them more, then we'll train them more. But that's what this is identified. So if you ever do a reviewer question, then you need to go ahead to this checklist. It automatically will pop up. So the type of error, in this case, he forgot to do a W-2. I don't know if I even have that. I guess that would be a data entry error. So then I hit update, and then I want to go here, and then I want to say how much did that change the refund or taxes owed. So in this case, change less than 500. Then I hit update. So I'm tracking all this so I can run reports on this. So then I hit back to client or back, go back. So that's all you need to do. Now Ethan would go in and take care of the rest. So he would enter the W-2, call the client, and then move it to EF ready. Now let's just say all he did is forgot to upload a tax return, which happens all the time, or the signature docs. So if he forgot to upload a tax return, what I'd like the reviewers to do is, since you're in the file, go ahead and upload the return. So you've already verified with the signature docs that the dollar amounts are correct. So you're already in the return, just PDF the return, upload it so that he doesn't have to go back in. But you're going to send him a nice friendly reminder that he forgot to do it. But it really is kind of a pain for the preparer. They're very busy typically. So then they have to go back in, go into Drake, PDF the return, upload the return, unless it's already stored on their computer. So we don't really like doing that as a preparer. I'm speaking that way. I mean, because if the reviewer is right there inside the return, just PDF the return, upload it, and then make a note, send it to them and say, hey, you forgot to upload the return. Just try to do that, in the future, just a friendly reminder. So let's say we did that. So I'm going to go back here to my events. So I'm going to I'm going to delete this and start over with a new reviewer question. So I'm going to hit add an event. And again, I'm going to switch this to Ethan because Ethan was the preparer. So I'm going to make my notes about that. So review questions. And I think I might have a predefined. Nope, I guess I don't. Forgot to upload return. I did it for you. Okay. And then I'm going to assign this to Ethan. And then right down here where it's check keep assigned. So I don't want this to slow down. This doesn't affect anything. He just forgot to upload the return. I still want to get this thing e-filed. The goal is review the returns and e-file them as quick as we can. Obviously, if there's a mistake and it's severe enough that the client needs to know about it, we're not going to e-file until the client knows about it, just because they may say, hey, I'm going somewhere else. So that's why we do that. But in this case, it's not a big deal. So I want the whole process to keep going, but I want Ethan to see this. So I'm going to move this from reviewer question to EF ready. So it's going to close out the reviewer question event, but I want him to still see this assigned task. So to do that, I need to select keep assigned. So that's the only time I ever have to check the box keep assigned is if I'm closing out that event. So if you ever, like the reviewer question I had before, where it said W2 missing, I'm not going any further. So that event stays open. I don't have to check this box. And the reason I'm pointing this out is because if you check this box every time you assign it to somebody, some of our new preparers don't understand. They have to uncheck that box, and so these assigned tasks show up in their assigned tasks forever, just because there's a lot for them to know. So only check that box if you're going to move it to EF ready. So I'm going to move this to EF ready. So I'm going to come down here and hit add additional events. So I just made my note. In this case, I'm going to say type of error because I want to track this too. No tax return. I update. And then for the dollar change, it was 0. Didn't affect anything. So it's very minor. If this is the worst case he does, I'm very happy. And now I'm going to go ahead and hit add event, and I'm going to move this to EF 1040. So it's good to go. He'll still see the assigned task that he forgot to e-file it. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to upload the return. But it doesn't slow down the process, so we'll e-file this. Okay, let me see if I covered everything I wanted. Now I'm got that recorded. I want to note one thing here. So this being a refund advance. So in the case before when he missed a W-2 and I signed it to Ethan. So if Ethan's extremely busy and it's 10 o'clock in the morning and now it's 5 o'clock at night. Well, when that client came in at 10 o'clock in the morning, they're expecting to get a notice whether they got their refund advance or not, probably within an hour or two. So just because you're assigning that to Ethan doesn't mean Ethan's going to look at his assigned task when he's doing one return after another. So you as a reviewer, I want you to take the responsibility that you need to monitor those review questions on the homepage. And if they're refund advances, they need to be acted on timely. So hopefully if you're in the office reviewing, you would then get up and say, hey, Ethan, I know you're busy, but you forgot to key this W-2 in and it changes it by $400. Do you want to give the client a call real quick before you go grab another return so we can get this refund advance out? Okay, so that's the reviewer's responsibility because I know how it can get, and we do not look at our assigned tasks all the time until we get a break, and that may be hours. So that's what I want the reviewers to do this year is to your responsibility to make sure refund advances are timely acted on. So you have to make sure that the preparer knows. Now, if the preparer knows and they still ignore it, okay, then I don't know if there's much you can do other than report it to me. All right, that's all I had to say about that. Now these 10 and 11, these review reports, if you're interested, data management, you can actually track how many reviews that you do. So if you work all day just reviewing, you want to see how many did I review today, you can actually go there and see the total count. Same way with error reports. If you want to see who's doing the errors, this might be more of me, but where this is at, if I close this out, because I think I'm done with this little checklist. If I go to my home page, under data management, if I hit office events, and under the filter, because everybody, it's these filters uniquely by user. So you just come down here and select review and process. And if you want to have all users, you can see everybody who's reviewing and see how many you did. If that's an interest to you, that's how you would do it. For the checklist, which I would like the reviewers to do this because sometimes you forget to change your name on that event user. So if you come here to data management and you hit checklist, and now I go to my filter, and I have reviewer questions and I have all users, and now this closed checklist, so I have to select these and I close this out. So this is gonna, and I check these boxes here. So it's a few steps and I hit view details. So this is gonna show me Ethan, no tax return, the change was 0, and this is a client. So if you're the reviewer and you don't do any tax returns, your name should never show up here as the event user, but I can guarantee you, you are gonna forget to change the name, and so then you're gonna look like you're making the mistakes and not the preparer. So it may be wise if after you're done for the day reviewing, you come in here and see if your name appears here, and if it does, then you need to go back in the file and change the event user to the preparer so that we can keep track of this. And it's not necessarily I'm tracking who's making all the mistakes. I want to find out, is there a problem? Does someone need to slow down, or do they need to focus on uploading the return? Because whatever the mistakes are, the goal is to eliminate them or reduce them, and we can't do that unless we know what they are. So that's what this report's all about. But I need the reviewers. You're a key part. Actually, you're the main part to make these reports, that report even work. So that is all I had for the review process. Thank you.